Hey there, everyone. This is my video about my Gijoe classified Tomahawk build. Thanks for watching. I wanted to show this build in for a little bit more detail. I'm making this video just to highlight the build. I'm not a YouTuber, so I'm not going to try to add, subscribe, all this other stuff. I literally just want to show off the features, talk about how I built it, and some of the details and such. So unscripted, I'm just doing it, First thing, I want to give a couple shout outs to the first is the creator of this file, which is Steve from ST3 Toys. He makes a lot of classified scale retro models and some newer classified stuff. Does an amazing job. Really nice guy. I've enjoyed talking with him, and I think I have all his files right now. And I absolutely love building his stuff. They're fantastic files. They go together well. The next shout out I want to do is just to GI Customs. He is a YouTuber that does some really good detailed builds, and I like his stuff. It kind of inspired me to do better detail on my builds, and I have a history and a past of doing models like tanks and 135 scale military stuff. So I drew on a lot of those skills because originally I was just doing more toys but really kind of added some detail. Last one I want to give a shout out to is actually next to is to Brown Box Toys. Really thinking outside the box. If you ever want to cut me a deal on your Blackhawk, I would love to build that. It's just the Blackhawk is insane. I just can't afford it right now. And the last one is Destro. Destro is my spirit animal, who is one of my favorite YouTubers for G.I. Joe. So these are the files from Steve's Toys. I have been 3D printing a long time, and I do a lot of 3D printing. I want to just quick show off. Don't mind my mess, too, sorry. Some fangs that I've 3D printed. I did the hydrofoil. I did that one last year. I did the Ostriker last year. Got the Wolverine, 2 Devilfish, my G.I. Joe collection. Just a quick rundown of that. I did the water moccasin, and the water moccasin, don't mind the dust, but that was my first 3D print, I think. And then over here, we've got the Night Raven from Steve as well. And we've got the whale and a couple. Got to have your rattlers, right? So back to this. So these are my builds. I want to do something a little different as opposed to just a straight build. So I had a story in mind for these, that G.I. Joe wanted to do some more. Wanted to get helicopters for design for behind enemy lines. So like going behind Cobra's lines. And the Tomahawk, which is obviously based on the Chinook. Chinooks are one of the fastest helicopters in the military. And if you were to kind of look at this design of this helicopter, it's sort of small. And huge props on it. And it's got triple engines. And it doesn't have a lot of weight to it, so it would be a very fast helicopter. So I thought maybe this would be an upgrade, and G.I. Joe kind of would take the Joes would take it and maybe modify it more for mission specific stuff, and do like a night attacker and direct action penetrator. If you are familiar with like 160th SOAR, they have a Blackhawk DAP, and that's basically a Blackhawk that's kind of an attacker. A little more arms and stuff like that. So that was kind of my idea behind that, and modify up a few things. So I'm going to go tip to butt on this and talk about what I did, how I built it, and the materials used. This is all modeled in PLA and ABS type resin. Finer detail stuff, I use ABS resin. That way it's kind of play quality so it doesn't break. Regular resin is really brittle, and so it'll break. This is a little bit more sturdy. I did some redesigning. So starting with the front, I added a external refilling probe that I designed to 2 external tanks. And you'll see that I added a tank on each side for extended flight range. I figured that there was no tank that you could see on the helicopter, so I wanted to add that and give it some additional range. The front, which is the clear glass, this is buffed resin. So what I do is I 3D print it in resin, and then I wet sand it down and I buff it out. I left it to where the dash comes out to put troops in. Okay. The front dash, originally I wanted to redesign it with updated panels. I didn't have time, and I was actually pretty satisfied with just 3D printing it in color from a Bamboo A1. I did redesign the controllers using an updated controller, and one was 3D printed in resin, the other one was 3D printed in PLA, so I just tried it both. And I added some colors on the controllers, and I added an updated throttle. I did keep the seats original. I had tried redesigning them, and I just didn't like the way it turned out. So I just I went with it. I was like, you know what? I don't need to be like crazy on the details. Coming up to the engines. The engines are all... I wish I could take this apart right now. I can't because, I got so many hands. But the engines came out fantastic. They really did. They came out really, really nice with a nice wash on them. And I did some really good details, and they came out fantastic. I did redesign and add this collar right here where the rotor goes. And if you look at the front covers, there was a large gap in there. And what that cover does, that collar does, it really pulls them together really hard. And it seals up that gap to make it nice and even so you don't see any gap on those covers. It also raises up the rotor a little bit, so it doesn't affect the rear engine. All the electronics and the batteries underneath these covers for the lights. And you'll see that it has functional lights. So if you look, it has strobing lights. There's red and green. Underneath there is a flashing white strobe, a red strobe, and a red strobe on the rear. And they match up. They match up all the way through, and a strobe on the top. And so that's where all the electronics are. I used an RC12, like a set of RC lights. I modified them up a little bit. I added a switch here, nice and flush. And if you look inside, the interior is lit as well. And I designed some collars or like some sockets to hold those LEDs in, so it wasn't just hanging there. And then what I did with the lighting and the wiring was I wrapped all the wiring in a twisted pair, and I glued it in so it looked like wiring harnesses through the hull of the helicopter. So that's the lighting. As you can see, I did some detail work, some dry brushing. I had done a wash on this originally, and I used Tamiya wash, and it ruined my whole entire helicopter. I had to redo the whole entire thing. So I'll never use Tamiya wash again. And I was going to do a very light wash on it, and I didn't think it would really make that big of a difference, so I just decided to skip it and not risk it because I was really super happy with the paint. One more shout out that I forgot to say was Bad Mother Tattoos for all the decals. I love the decals. Moving back, I swapped out, like I said, I dropped the dumb bombs and I swapped this out for Hellfire missiles. So I added these Hellfires. These Hellfires are held on by just magnets. So, like I said, I really wanted to make this where something you can play with. So everything's held on by magnets. The interior is a combination of PLA resin. I did keep the seats, like I said. These are resin printed. And this is just an M2 Browning. And I redesigned all this so you can pull these out. Now, the idea of this is that I can make this helicopter mission specific. So Gijoe, if they have to, maybe they need a different kind of loadout or something like that, they could take out the guns or replace the guns. Maybe I can make like a M134 mini guns later, whatever the case. So it was really kind of I wanted to make it more like mission loadout specific. The seats and all this stuff, all that can pull back out. So if you want to put in cargo in there. Moving back up, the rotors, I skipped all the plastic pins in the helicopter, and I did everything Allen fittings through here. So I like the way it looks, and the blades can come out. This can come out for storage, and also if you untighten them, you can fold all the blades. So everything on here is still hardware. And then like if you look in the back, like the rear lid, that drops down, that one's inside there by hardware. So I did Allen bolts throughout all of that. So everything is all Allen bolts and fitting. Same thing with the tires. I want to do Allen bolts throughout everything so that way they still spin. Moving back up, I'm going to talk a little bit about the turret. I forgot talking about that. This is what I like to call the Hellraiser turret. This is 2 miniguns with a front sight that I designed. And, it's a little bit bigger than a 134. So I'd probably say maybe, I wouldn't call it a cannon, but I'd probably maybe say like maybe a 50 caliber minigun, which would not be very mini. But that's held in by magnets, and it articulates, it moves around. It's got a really nice fit down there. Makes the chopper look a lot more aggressive, I think. It still has the winch on the bottom, so you see the winch hanging down there. It has all the rope inside. 2 guns on each side. Still moving back, we have flare/chaff launchers for defensive. Moving more back, we have more engine details. I didn't want to do this with magnets because I like the bolt, and so I just decided to use a bolt. That's all there is. And a lot of paint details. Construction, this is, like I said, PLA, and then what I do is I assemble it all, and then I fill in all the holes or the gaps. So I'll use body filler, and I'll sand everything down until it's nice and smooth, and I'll do a couple, I'll sand down basically like the plastic right here as much as I can. You can't really sand PLA. But I'll use a filler primer, and then I'll sand it all down. And I might do 1 or 2 coats on the filler primer. And then what I'll do is I'll then paint it. So I painted it. This is actually like 3 coats because I screwed it up. But then I painted it, and then I airbrushed it. And then once I airbrushed it, I did all the airbrushing by freehand. And then I did the decals and the dry brushing. So I put on all the decals, and then I use a flat acrylic mat through a spray gun to seal everything in to give it that flat look, and it looks really super even, and I spray everything down. For a lot of the paint details like you see on here, and you'll see on here, and like on the side, those are paint markers. This is a new trick I found, and I'm loving paint markers. Absolutely loving paint markers, because I used to do all this stuff by hand and like freehand painting it, and it sucked with a brush. Now using this paint marker, it just rock and rolls. So I also I designed my own stand for this. As you can see, I named it. It's the Tomahawk H1A DAP. That's the direct action penetrator. And then I designed that in the stand. It's got the little Gijoe insignia on there, and it holds really well. And it still comes off the stand, of course. On the other side, we have the winch. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the winch features, but I'm going to move on to this one. So this one is my next model that I came up with. And the kind of thought behind this is that G.I. Joe wanted to do a night attacker for Night Force. So this one is my Night Force model. There was a guy on Facebook, one of the Facebook groups, that did this Tomahawk build in the dark green scheme, and it looked awesome. And that's what kind of inspired me to do the Night Force model. And I really dig Night Force. And if you look at the Night Force characters, their color theme is that gray, the black, the green, and the red. And that's why I did the color choices there. I didn't want to get crazy with the red. Night Force tends to get really crazy with the red and really off on the decals. I just kind of avoided that. Originally, I was going to do hints of red on the Hellfires, but it was really hard to do the paint on the Hellfire. So the Night Force model is a little different, and it's a little more modular. And my thought process behind this one was that Night Force was coming in and doing behind low flying, behind like enemy lines, and this is not a stealth helicopter, so they would have to come in really super low on radar. And so they could swap out the Hellraiser turret to a FLIR that I designed that would allow them to fly really super low and fast and detect radar and missiles and other defensive stuff. And they designed this to where, the Night Force chopper would be a little bit more modular. And that was really the only real difference between the two that I did, but it basically kind of all follows the same theme. In here you see Dusty, and Dusty is my guy for everything. So he's always my guy that I take pictures with on all my vehicles, because I guess he was the only one I had that was extra. I used a combination of since I screwed up the first helicopter, I actually had Dragonfly decals available left over, and I was still waiting for the Tomahawk, and I had some Tomahawk decals left. So I used a combination of the Bad Mother's Dragonfly decals and the Tomahawk decals, and it was like one of those happy accidents that really came out well. And then of course I had some Night Force decals. This one has different flare chaff launchers than the other one, and I figured that was maybe just something G.I. Joe decided to upgrade on this model, so maybe more defensive capabilities. And this, of course, was the Tomahawk H1A Night Attacker. And it probably could have been AH1A, but we're splitting hairs. So once again, this is more modular, and you can make it more mission specific. And I wanted to do like accessories. So like the winch comes out, and you can take the winch out, and it does interfere with the gun. Now you get a much better view of the gun. But let's say you were doing fast rope. This is a little fast rope attachment I designed. You can put that in there just like that, if I can get it. And then I made a fast rope. So you just attach that fast rope right up here. And then the helicopter's coming in, and the troops, they fast rope down, and then they drop the fast rope, and the helicopter takes off. So, like I said, I wanted to make it like a story, like mission specific for this particular one. And it really build time. I started this back in. I 3D printed this last summer, and I really started it basically in September. And I took a long break, but I did put about a solid month of work into it, especially in electronics. There was a lot of stuff that I had done different with this one. Namely the stand, the electronics, different paintings, different designing, and all this stuff I did have to redesign for myself. Like the guns and the stand and everything like that, and the tanks, and the front turret and the Hellfire is working, and so it was a lot of work and effort. And that's kind of like I love this part of 3D printing, is taking these files that people make and then making them sort of my own. Also too, like I would really like it that it updates it for classified. Classified has a more updated feel to it, and so I feel like this helicopter really is updated. And out of all the 3D builds I've done, I have added a lot of different stuff to my 3D builds, but not quite to this extent. Like the hydrofoil, I added the life preservers, and I changed the guns, and I did add 250 calibers to the front of the hydrofoil, and I did the anchor, and I took off some of the different parts of that. The same thing with the Ostraker. I hated the original tires in the Ostraker, so I made those, I redesigned those. I added the high lift jack. I did a few other things to this. Oh, I added lights to it. Like I had a light bar. So I do like redesigning these. Oh, I did the Skyhawks too. But I do like redesigning these, but the thing is that this one was the most, I think out of all the 3D prints I've done so far, This one feels like the most like a real classified vehicle. Like, you know, I feel like this one came from like, you know, this is how it would look if it was going to be a HasLab. So that's kind of like where it came out. I'm really super happy about that. Yeah, I'm just really, really happy about it. I'm really proud of this one. It really came out nice. So, thank you for watching. Thank you. Like I said, I'm not a YouTuber. I'm happy to show off what I do, but primarily I'm making the video just for the groups that I'm in, just to see the builds and kind of to help the community. You know, like I got a lot of inspiration from these guys I'm watching on YouTube. So, you know, just a big, huge thank you. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to post more of them. I'm doing 2 Mobats right now. I've got 2 Wolves, and I've got 2 Sky Strikers. I build everything in 2s. Now I've realized that. Just build it in 2. Now you have 2 different versions. That you'll be happy, like 2 Dragonflies. You know, so, you know, it's all about army building, right? So thank you so much. Yeah, and thanks for watching the video. Thanks. Bye.